Alrighty, let's see if this takes here this time. Stream validation in progress. And drum roll, please. Will it let me broadcast? Maybe, maybe not. It's still validating. That's not a good thing. Okay, maybe it will this time. Would you look at that? Hola, mis amigos. I don't understand. I should be able to hit click, play, there we are. But sometimes it says you're not there. And it makes no sense why I'm not here, because I'm here. And it's there. And they're there. I don't understand. But we're going to get into today's live chats. Let me jump back on this here goofy little thing. Yeah, we just lost all of our viewers. We're back to 2. Hi, 2 of you who figured out that there's a new stream. So we're going to talk a whole lot today about the NHL rumor mill. Obviously, there's the second report on Evgeni Malkin, the Penguins talking to the Florida Panthers. That came from Montreal. It was the same outlet that reported in January that Olli Maatta was on the trade block. We now know that to be true. We confirmed that a couple weeks ago, that indeed it was even more serious than we were led to believe. So I give the boys in Montreal a bit of credit. They also were the first on last summer, the first on the Max Domi, Alex Galchenyuk trade. They say that they've got good sources, that indeed the Penguins have talked with the Florida Panthers, and Jonathan Huberdeau's name is indeed attached. We'll talk about the Malkin stuff. We'll also talk a bit about Phil Kessel. There's some other NHL trade rumors and hot stove items going on, some rumors floating around about Erik Karlsson, about Matt Duchene. And they always seem to center on Canadian cities, don't they? It's just, I'm not necessarily sure why, because the American audience eats this stuff up, maybe even more so than the Canadian audience. The casual fans jump in on the rumor mill stuff. But, for whatever reason, I think Canadians understand it's a little bit of a sport. The rumor mill is a little bit of a sport in Canada. You know that maybe they had a conversation. You know, maybe an assistant general manager, a head scout, the janitor has some information. It's not necessarily bedrock breaking news. And I don't necessarily know that the American audience takes it in that same way, because when, say, we'll put out, okay, there's talks over here. Wait, let me put my hand in the screen. There's talks over here. The American audience often goes, oh my God, it's happening. It's like, well, calm down just a little bit, because it's not necessarily happening. It's just percolating. It's, there's might be 5 things in process. We found out about 1. That, I think, is a very important distinction to make. All right, glad to see some of the viewers coming back. I always hate when I lose everybody that piled on at the start. I want to say, hey, everybody, I know you got cut off. That was YouTube. Corkscrew them and their giant parent company who fights with Google and, oh wait, no, YouTube is Google. They fight with Facebook. Antitrust legislation, you say. So we're going to talk about all of those things, plus, of course, what you've got on the chat board now. Yes, you're all live. Let me take off caps. And I'm also going to share this, too, while you're all sitting here. Because I wonder this. When you see these Evgeni Malkin reports come out, or you see the Phil Kessel stuff, what is your gut reaction? I know what some folks do. if you hop on Reddit or some of the blogs, whoever dares to report such things just gets annihilated. If you looked cross-eyed when you were in 7th grade, I kid you not, somebody will find out about it and use that as a reason to discredit anything you've ever reported. My gosh, I was wrong about who might win the Stanley Cup. I know nothing. If only I could be as smart as a lot of my critics, It must be a burden for them to be so smart. Or these people who take to online to just hammer anybody on this side. I guess maybe Ma didn't bring the meatloaf fast enough last night. Fortunately, on this occasion, the second report that followed was nearly identical to the first. And we're going to be talking about, where is he? There he is. This guy, Evgeni Malkin. I really thought it was going to blow over, right? I genuinely and honestly thought that the Evgeni Malkin stuff was going to go away. I guess it's rearing its ugly head again. Matt says, gut reaction, I don't really believe it. Not really sure why. Matt, I don't blame you. When my sources sometimes tell me stuff, my gut reaction, in fact, when we got the Malkin to Florida stuff back on May 6th, and then we published on May 7th. Oh, I take that back. We had it for several days, and I sat on it because I'm like, oh, man. I said, give it a couple days. I said to our source, give it a couple days. I don't want to run with this too soon because it's going to go big, and within a couple hours, it had 6,000 Facebook shares or 5,900 and change. And that's huge for a Facebook number, plus, all of the other sites that linked to it and the news reports that followed with it, et cetera. We did sit on it for a couple days, and I'm like, double check. Make sure, this is not going to be a whim today and gone tomorrow where we're left with our butt hanging out. And, so May 6th at night, May 7th morning, whenever we published it, it was credible enough, still sticking around at that point. Now here we are, just about 1 month later. The Montreal media has also picked up and gotten a source on it, which confirmed that Malkin and this guy are right now linked. That's Jonathan Huberdeau. You like the facial hair? Had about 92 points this season. The guy can score. There just is absolutely no question, no ifs, no ands, no buts about it. He's also 26 years old, which make him one of the Penguins' youngest part of the top six, one of the youngest parts of the core. I will tell you, one of the surprising things to me, look, Phil Kessel doesn't hit. I mean, the linesmen generally have more contact on a game-to-game basis than Phil Kessel. Huberdeau has less. I think Hubie had 8 hits this past season. 8. How do you get there? How do you only have 8 hits in 60, 70, 80 games? That to me is extraordinary. But 92 points, he's not known necessarily as a coach killer or a guy whose effort can come and go. So there's just a lot to be said for that if he buys into Sullivan's system. And maybe it's the Florida thing. You saw what happened to Jared McCann and Nick Bjugstad when they came to Pittsburgh. It was like this flowering of both players, the blooming. That's maybe a better word, huh? Because no one wants to deflower any players. What? I don't. Maybe some of you. Moving on. Yes, I do catch some of the weird stuff that I say and then can't make a joke about. Let me get to the message board here. All right. Start the stream and chill for a few minutes before starting. The problem is I can't edit the video later. Do you really think trading away a generational player like Gino will extend the window for the Pens? Can they really get a return equal to what he is actually worth? Great question, S. Miller. The answer is I don't know. I genuinely don't know. In Jim Rutherford's chair, I would lean against trading Evgeni Malkin unless he said the situation is irretrievably broken. If he said, I want out, then you move him, and you do so very quickly. You do not want this to drag on. I don't know. If the Penguins can get a legitimate number 2 center, then yes, trading Malkin could, in theory, extend their window. If they get a 26-year-old like Huberdeau, let's say they went and got Matt Duchene, Kevin Hayes, or, a second-line center type, then yes. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't be the boys are back in town, but it would be a very competitive team nonetheless. And it would extend the Penguins' window with guys in their mid-20s. They'd be coming into their ready-to-win phase as opposed to getting into their last leg of their career. But it has to be a good return, doesn't it, S. Miller? And Medina says, where'd you go? Basically, of the mindset that if it happens, it happens. Yeah, she'd miss them, but she's for the team, not the individual. They have to get better if they want success. That last sentence, so true. The Penguins just got bounced in the first round by how do you want to describe the New York Islanders? How do you want to describe them? I can't call them hapless, but they were a rigid, structured team. But if they broke structure, they weren't going to beat anybody, as Carolina proved. Carolina got them out of that structure a little bit and just annihilated them. Time to cut losses with Phil. Gino isn't going anywhere, says JV. Okay. Our boy Kyle and his wild trade proposals is back. Here's my offer. Kessel, Mata, Zach Aston Reese, and Jack Johnson. Don't forget. To Vancouver for Bo Horvat, the guy that won the Calder, Brock Besser, and the 10th pick in the draft, and the 20th pick. I don't know, Kyle. That didn't make me laugh. You're losing it a little bit. Let's see here. Corey says, so what will be the Penguins' backup plan? Who would replace the goals from Phil or Gino? Corey, do me a favor. I want you to read Pittsburgh, the PHN Extra. What would it take to replace Phil Kessel? It's not going to take 82 points to replace Phil Kessel. It's going to take 50 to 55 points and some defensive responsibility. If a player can provide those simultaneously, the Penguins' goal differential would increase. You're like, what? Yes. Keep this in mind. It's not how many goals you score. It's how many more goals than the opposition that you score. So 50 to 55 points with defensive responsibility, that would replace Phil Kessel. Generally, a guy who gets in the mid-50s is going to have about 20 goals. Same as Phil Kessel. And, 30, 35 assists. Jake Gensel will take Phil Kessel's spot on the top power play, so I don't think there'll be much of a drop there. Maybe in the beginning, and fans will scuff their feet and grouse when Gensel gets in the rhythm. That power play has been together now for 3 years. 4 years? 3 years. Three and a half, whatever. And they've been chugging along. It's going to take the new guy a little bit of time to get integrated, but also with Jake Gensel on that power play, you'll have 3 guys able to go to the net, Hornquist, Gensel, Crosby. You'll have that rotation factor, so you'll have that movement, which will discombobulate a penalty kill. So in some ways, the power play could even be better next year when everyone kind of gets used to each other. What more do I know about the goalie the Penguins signed? Depth for Wilkes-Barre more than anything. Here's what we learned last year, Medina, about Juuso Riikola. The Penguins saw something they liked in that goaltender, and his name escapes me. We'll just compare. They saw something they liked in Riikola, so they signed him to a contract. They brought him over. They could have stashed him in Wilkes-Barre, but he had such a great training camp, they said, okay, this guy is NHL worthy. When they bring the goaltender over, they're going to put him through his paces, and they're going to find out what he's got. You'd have to think he starts the year in Wilkes-Barre-Scranton, just because they've got Murray and DeSmith. What happens if the Finnish goaltender is solid? Then the Penguins really can trade Tristan Jarry. In fact, they might have signed him as Jarry insurance. That is something that can't be discounted, right? You can't discount that. Let me slide right between. I start moving around. I start talking with my hands, and before you know it, I'm. My father watches these videos too, and checks out a lot of the stuff I write. And you've the way the lights in the studio hit me. My parents were like, "Do you dye your hair?" I'm like, "No." And I looked back, and really, the way the lights come off this brick wall, and we didn't spend $10,000 on lights. My hair does look much darker on this screen than if you catch me out having a beer at Redbeard's or other such fun places. You're like, that's not the same guy. But yeah, I looked, and it does look like I dye my hair on here. I don't. I haven't reached that level of vanity yet. As you can see, the gray temples, which have invaded my head over the last couple years because of, not sleeping all season with Pittsburgh hockey now. Let's get back to Evgeni Malkin and Jonathan Huberdeau. Let me find the picture. There we go. If the Penguins can add a player capable of 30 goals and 60 assists, like Huberdeau is, and he's a left-handed guy, so you're not gonna play him on the right wing most likely. You're going to stick him on the left side. Although, naturally, he was a center growing up. I don't know. I don't know if the Penguins are thinking to slide him back to center, which would be craziness, especially if it worked. I don't know. I don't know what the Penguins are thinking with all of that. But I think we can ascertain, as Elliot Friedman did confirm about a week after our initial report on his 31 thoughts, somewhere around May 13th, May 14th, that other teams do think there's something to this Malkin stuff. I thought it was going to blow over, but he's on the phone. A live look now at Jim Rutherford in his office. No, obviously not. I'm kidding. Nick wants to know any more about Kessel and Malkin? Nope, Nick. No, we were just chatting about all of that stuff. So let's... Malkin, I guess I'll give you my final thought on Evgeni Malkin and the trade talk. It would have to be necessary to trade Malkin if you can save that relationship. I think the organization wants to save it, right? You don't want to trade a guy like Evgeni Malkin unless you have to. Also, you're not going to get equal value from what Malkin can bring. Subset to that, however, is that if Malkin isn't going to buy in, if Malkin isn't going to give all that Evgeni Malkin can give, then you can trade him. And if you get something like Huberdeau and a number one pick in this very deep draft, You have the chance to retool on the fly. And what Evgeni Malkin gave the Penguins in large portions last year was not close to what he's capable of. He wasn't Evgeni Malkin, the Conn Smythe Art Ross Hart Trophy winner last year. He just wasn't. And the Evgeni Malkin we saw in the second half of last year could be replaced. The Evgeni Malkin we know him to be is irreplaceable. So there is that decision. Which Malkin are you going to get going forward? And that probably decides if you trade Malkin or if you don't. Let me get back to the message board here. Oh, yeah, Emil Larmy. Thanks, Medina. Send Kessel to Edmonton for McDavid and RPH. You mean RNH? And Ethan Bear. I like Ethan Bear a lot. I was in a Dynasty League a few years ago, and I snagged him before anybody else knew about him. And then everyone starts trying to trade you for him, giving you the faded prospects with bigger names. I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna hang on. Do me a favor, like and share the video as well. Spread the word on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. We are going to be traveling to the draft. I'll be putting up a tip jar on Pittsburgh Hockey Now because, as you probably know, Vancouver is not an inexpensive city. It's going to cost us a bundle to cover the draft this year. Dallas wasn't too bad last year. Vancouver is just insane. It's going to take 4 or 5 days of my life. They already amended my flight. They added a layover to my flight. So I'll be sleeping, I think, in Chicago. I was supposed to land at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Saturday night. Instead, I'll be landing at 6 a.m. Saturday morning or Sunday morning. Oh, so I'm going to be just a miserable puppy on Sunday. There's no question about that. Our boys from Boston Hockey Now will be at the draft with us, and our secret third location. We have to try to get him in. Chris says, love the chats. When do these big changes happen for the Pens at the draft, start of free agency, all summer long? I just want to see Pens get going. The calendar on those changes, Chris, are when they make sense. Historically, those changes will begin to happen this month. Any time now, they start to get very serious. June 23rd this year is when that NHL look period begins, when free agents can begin to talk to teams. Teams can talk to free agents. They can't negotiate, but give lawyers 10 seconds and they'll figure out a way around that when a lawyer's like, yeah, other players like him are making 5 years, $50 million. We'll talk on July 1st. Well, they didn't negotiate, but now the team knows what the player wants, right? I've already begun those conversations with as many people around the league as I can. And I will tell you, right now, everyone is being very tight-lipped about schedules of changes, about contracts. Everyone's kind of in the figure-it-out mode. Stanley Cup final is usually that, when agents and their teams huddle with players, when teams huddle with their front office staff, and phone calls and emails and texts, and one-gun salutes begin to be exchanged. So we'll start to know more probably next week. But with Malkin, because he's not a free agent, by the draft, I would think, is when the Penguins would want to either close the book on that crap or have it done. Same with Phil Kessel, depending on the return for Phil Kessel. Because if you're getting a draft pick in return, you want it to be this year. This is a deep draft. That's thinking number one. Number two is that if you make the trade say on July 1st, like the Penguins did for Kessel, you don't get that draft pick until next year. So you've lost a full year of development. You don't get the cookie inside the cookie jar until next year. Almost a year from the date of the trade. That's not something I think that the Penguins would want. If you're going to retool on the fly, you need your asset now, or you get your asset handed to you. All right, Jeremy Roenick apparently had an inside tip that said that Kessel wanted to be traded to a Southwest team that didn't make the playoffs. Yeah, I remember that. So it seems Arizona is his choice. Yeah, poorly kept secret that Kessel would love to play for Tocchet. Anthony, we discussed it at PPG Paints Arena. I know several of us. It was a very poorly kept secret. I think Kessel has seen the writing on the wall, and the Penguins have seen the writing on the wall for some time. The Penguins kept the core together to go one more time. He knows where he's going, or he knows where he wants to go. Now, following up that JR rant, was that on a Chicago radio station that Jeremy Roenick said that, or was that on a Toronto radio station? Regardless. What Bob McKenzie reported then a couple days later is that Phil Kessel's no to the Penguins regarding the Minnesota trade was a soft no. There's Phil, so you're not looking at me. Kessel's no was a soft no. It was like, well, if you can't find a better location for me, I'll think about Minnesota. And it wasn't like, absolutely not. That's where McKenzie left it. Yes, Medina reminds us to look for the notifications for the viable sports outlets and reporters. You're not spreading fake trades from parody accounts. Haven't we all been burned by that? Does Arizona have the money to pay Phil Kessel? Would we have to retain salary? Well, Anthony, I don't know about you. I'm not retaining any of Phil Kessel's salary. You maybe can call the Penguins and help retain it. I'm not. You're on your own with that one. But that's something that would happen in negotiations. I don't think Arizona does have the cash to pay Phil Kessel. And even if they did right now, do not underestimate the ownership change. At the Board of Governors meeting in a couple or a few weeks, the Arizona Coyotes will be sold again, or at least a large chunk of them will be sold. Does the new owner want to get saddled with a 31, 32-year-old guy like Phil Kessel? Would Phil Kessel increase the bottom line of the Arizona Coyotes, or could they do better elsewhere? A new owner is going to ask that. Is Phil Kessel going to bring me $6.8 million of business value? Now, that's 3 playoff games. Maybe 4. The Penguins indeed might have to kick in $1 million a season for the next 3 years, but the Penguins really can't. The Penguins live at the salary cap within $100,000. They live there. So I don't see how they could really kick in money. That's my take on it. I could be wrong. The Penguins in Arizona could find a third partner to do that. I just don't know. Here's something crazy. How's this? Florida picks up $1 million, sends Kessel to Arizona from Florida. Anyway. Like, a la the whole Derek Brassard thing, right? How sore do I think JR is now after watching Sundqvist in these playoffs? I know this is a popular deal, JV. Don't forget, this trade happened in the summer of 2017. We're now in the summer of 2019. It wasn't until this season, and not even at the beginning, that Oskar Sundqvist really began to gain traction and become a fixture in the lineup. He went through waivers. He's been through waivers, and off the top of my head, can't recall if it was this October or last year, October, November. So it's not like Sundqvist stepped in to be this fourth-line force for St. Louis. And in all honesty, if the Penguins had hit on that second-round draft pick, if Zachary Lauzon, I think that's how you pronounce it properly. I apologize, Zach, if I'm mangling a little bit. The kid they picked up with that 51st overall pick in the Ryan Reeves trade, if they hit on him, this would be less of a discussion, right? But because of concussion issues, and I think he had a neck injury as well, because of all of that, the trade looks horrendous. Because Sullivan didn't deploy Ryan Reeves in the second half of the season, because that didn't work, it looks really bad. Now, if you go back to June 2017, I defended the trade then based on all of the available information. Of course, you can say, well, Reeves didn't work out. It's a bad trade. I don't think that's entirely fair. Just as I don't know that it's entirely fair to say the Penguins should have known Oskar Sundqvist was going to be at this point in his career. I mean, he's still only a fourth-line guy. Let's not blow him up into a top six juggernaut just yet. Would love to hear what I've heard about PEDs in the NHL. I maybe some other day we'll discuss topics like that. I'm not going to bog down the trade stuff to get into that. Here's one guy we should talk a little bit about because he could swing the balance of power in the Eastern Conference just a bit depending on where he winds up. The report out of Ottawa a couple days ago was that Erik Karlsson, his wife, is homesick. So the initial thought, the conclusion everyone jumped to, Karlsson's coming back to Ottawa! Well, that didn't really make much sense, did it? Because Ottawa is in a hardcore rebuild. Why would a guy of Karlsson's age jump into a team that's not going to win for 3, maybe 4 years, maybe longer than that even? The uncertainty of starting a rebuild. So there is another team that isn't far from Ottawa. An hour down the road, the Montreal Canadiens. That's if it's true that Karlsson's wife is homesick, that team makes the most sense. But there are other teams in the East who could be just lying in wait for a guy like Karlsson. The New York Rangers certainly have enough needs on defense. The New York Islanders could sneak in there and make a good pitch for a guy like Karlsson. Hey, we've got the new arena coming. Look, we made the playoffs. We were in the second round. You could make us, a championship contender. That's a pretty good pitch. They do have a Stanley Cup winning coach and a Stanley Cup winning GM on Long Island all of a sudden. So keep an eye on the Erik Karlsson stuff. I don't think he's going to be long for the West Coast. Also, Matt Duchene doesn't look like he's going to be hanging around Columbus, although they're trying. They're banging on that door. Stay home. Duchene, again, being linked to Canadian teams. I don't think that happens. I think, actually, the Evgeni Malkin situation could very much affect the Matt Duchene situation. How desperate does Columbus get when they realize they're going to lose Panarin? Oh, if they don't already know that. How desperate do they get? And another team in, say, the Atlantic Division sees Florida stock up with Dadanoff and Vincent Trocheck, Evgeni Malkin, the bread man. All of a sudden, they've got this wicked top six. They add some depth down in Florida. They become a real team to be reckoned with. And if they add Sergei Bobrovsky, that puts additional pressure on other teams in that division. And Matt Duchene would be a very attractive get there. Here's a little other picture of Matt Duchene, in case you didn't know what he looked like. Got it? Here's this week's Leo update. There's little Leo, my grandson. He's getting to be a little bit of a diva. Cracking me up. His parents don't spoil him, but he's still got a little bit of, I don't know what the right word is. He will let you know if he is displeased with your effort. Maybe he's got a little bit of me in him. Maybe that's where it comes from. Let's see, Mutation says if he gets a big money contract, that's crazy. He gets hurt too much. I'm assuming we're talking about Karlsson, right? Mutation. And is pretty useless when the playoffs come around. Well, he was hurt a good bit this year. He was on one leg in the playoffs, was Karlsson this year. I don't know. I think teams make sure that they don't let Karlsson beat them in the playoffs, which opens up space for other guys. You can't overlook that potential. Although the very physical nature of the playoffs doesn't necessarily fit Karlsson's forte either. Who would be a good trade that actually fits well with Sullivan's system, Daniel asks. That's a really, really good question. I do think Zucker would be a great fit, but I think Zucker's a third-line guy. I don't know what top six would be available. That's just being blunt, honest. I don't think the Penguins are going to get a top six winger for Phil Kessel. I think Zucker might be the high water mark. That's why they went to Minnesota first. I don't think Colorado has anything they want to part with for Phil Kessel. I've heard Colorado bandied about. I don't know if Phil could play in the rarefied air. I'm double-checking the time. I do have to be out the door. We have to wrap the show up by 2 o'clock, so make sure you get your questions in, like, and share it now. I don't know that Colorado has anybody that they're going to give up. If the Penguins want to add a little bit on defense, then you can maybe take a run at Tyson Barrie. I've seen the Phil Kessel to Dallas stuff, and I thought, going back to originally we talked about some of the American audience mangling trade rumors, the person who wrote that merely wrote that Kessel could fit in Dallas, not necessarily reporting that conversations had taken place. And our Dallas source that tipped us off about Brassard back in February didn't tip us off on this one. I don't think Dallas could handle Radulov, Ben, Sagan, and Phil Kessel. You want to coach that team? All right, let's see here. I think the Pens will get Line A. You joke, Kyle. I wondered if there was a way, because Line A is going to want $10 million in the offseason. He wants $10 million in a brown paper bag, small unmarked bills. Come alone. Or he's threatening to see if there's an offer sheet out there for him. The funny thing is, if you signed him to like $10.4 million, what is it? 2 firsts and 2 thirds you have to give up. But if you go at 10.6, that's 4 first round picks. And I'm not sure the Penguins even have. No, do the Penguins have their third round pick next year? You have to have your original first and third round picks to do that. And I know they sent the 2020 second round pick in the Fleury trade. Do they have the first and the third? Only if they have all of their original picks for the next 2 years, first and third, could they do that. I don't know. Would you sign Line A to 10.4 and lose 2 first-round picks? I kind of think I'd think long and hard about it. Really? I mean, I would be more aggressive with the RFA offer sheets, I think, than most general managers. I would not be a popular guy at the general managers meetings, which occur in March, in some sunny, warm place. I would not be a popular guy at all. Brian Burke would have me by the untied tie. That's for sure. What do you think the criteria for getting a number retired should be? Boy, we're veering off of the trade hot stove stuff here. Number for getting a number retired, I think that's different for different players. It's different in Pittsburgh because you've had greats of all time, and they've not made a habit of retiring lesser numbers, like Paul Coffey, clearly one of the best of all time, but only played in Pittsburgh for a few years, or Larry Murphy, who's in the Hall of Fame. The Penguins just haven't done that. So the Penguins' criteria is clearly best of your generation. So Crosby's number goes up. I think Malkin's number right now would have to go up unless he's traded this summer. If he sticks around, his number goes up. It's so subjective. You can't put a numerical value on it. I also think if Letang plays his entire career in Pittsburgh, his number should go to the rafters. Taylor Hall for Sid's left wing. Would Jersey deal with Pitt? It's a good question, isn't it? The Penguins could not afford Taylor Hall unless the Penguins sent Malkin to New Jersey. Or if the Penguins sent what they got in the Malkin trade, and it was, say, Jonathan Huberdeau and a number 1 to New Jersey in exchange for Taylor Hall. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? If you want a big game shop, why not? Go for the biggest. Taylor Hall. I think that Jordan Eberle might be a good fit for the Penguins this summer, depending on how much salary cap they're able to shed this month. Who's the other winger that's available? Eberle. Jeff Skinner is going to sign, I think, re-sign in Buffalo. If he doesn't, he's still going to be far overvalued at like $9 million a season. For Jeff Skinner, a guy who was a 50-something point player who's kind of soft until this past season when he kind of blew up on the score sheet. No, I'm not paying $9 million for Jeff Skinner. Let some other sucker pay that price. No question about it. What else have we got here? Let me get my name back on here. Just in case you forget. So why don't you just trade Johnson and Mata? I believe they're going to end up dealing Ole Mata. I'm not getting into the Jack Johnson stuff today. I'm really not. Here's my thoughts on the Jack Johnson talk today. I guess the battery's dying. It's getting a little soft. Yeah, Bob and Doug would have a beer while we talk Jack Johnson. That's right. Gustav Nyquist is another guy I think would fit very well with the Penguins. I do. I think that could make some sense if they can get enough cap space. As I wrote yesterday, you just know the dogma won't let up. Okay, forget everything you know about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Scrub the slate clean. For some of you it'll be easier than others. I kid. Scrub everything you know. If I said a team had the most high-danger scoring chances in the league and allowed the fewest high-danger chances in the league, you'd say that was a really good team, wouldn't you? If I said that team that had the most high-danger chances also had the 9th most overall scoring chances, you'd say, okay, that's pretty good. And I said that same team allowed the 6th fewest scoring chances, you'd say, okay, that's pretty good, right? You'd say defense good, offense good. Go no further than that. You would say that, right? Then if I said with all these scoring chances, this team was 26th in conversion rate, which means they were just bricking their scoring chances. But they weren't allowing more goals. Would you say the problem was in this hand with the offense or this hand with the defense. The number of people yesterday, the Penguins' defense is the problem. You're illogical. You're stupid. I don't know how to be nice about it. I laid it out in crystal clear. Now if I said, oh, well, Jack Johnson's in this hand, then you're all like, oh, well, it's this hand's fault. I don't know how to overcome that. That just immediate, oh, here I am talking with my hands. Let me do that all again. In this hand, you've got all the scoring chances, best in the league. In this hand, you've got the least scoring chances. But this hand didn't convert. So which hand's fault is it? And the number of people that said defense was staggering. Only because they've just reflexively begun to, it's Jack Johnson's fault. If I were him, I would want to get the hell out of Pittsburgh. I would not want to stick around if I were him. Only because it's just so thick and stupid sometimes. I laid it out just like, okay, Penguins need more offense. If the Penguins' defense can lead the league in, fewest high-danger chances given up through the course of the season and be sixth best in fewest scoring chances given up, would you say they did a good job? And if the Penguins forwards had the most scoring chances in the league, would you say, that's not on the defense if they don't convert? Now, a little bit is, because the Penguins only have 1.5 offensive defensemen who can really convert. Justin Schultz right now is a bit of a tweener because he hasn't been converting. Sure, you'd love to see Jack Johnson, Marcus Pettersson, Brian Dumoulin, Olli Mata, Juuso Riikola be able to jump into the slot and crank one past a goaltender. It's just kind of not their game, is it? So could the Penguins use a bit more offense on the defense? Yes. Yes, they could. Is the defense at fault for being 26th in scoring chance conversions? No. Absolutely not, because the chances existed. That's what just drove me nuts. John asks, would you pay Murray $7.5 million or $8 million with his concussion and injury history? I think, JC, you've got it right on the nose. I think 7.5 is about where he should be. 7 maybe if the Penguins win the deal. 8 if they lose the deal. I think the Penguins might even like to be down closer to 6.5. But a nickel over 8, and the Penguins have problems. You might not see Matt Murray. Gut feeling. I don't think the Penguins would want to go over 8. What about getting Kapanen back from Toronto? I think a lot of teams, in fact, I know a lot of teams, Carolina especially, have pounded on Kapanen's or on the Toronto's door for Kapanen. So, Anthony, you know what happens when a lot of teams want a single player? The price goes up. Kapanen scored 43 points this year. And it's been 4 years since he was acquired by Toronto. And he finally had his coming out party with, 43, 44 points. I think the market will be overheated for Kapanen, and the Penguins won't be able to get their mitts on him. Somebody's going to overpay for him. That's my gut reaction. So how about it? I'd probably say no. Biggest problem with Jack Johnson is his jersey number 73. Who wears that? Justin Strelzik for the Steelers wore 73. You're right. I can't off the top. Peter Klima wore 75. Did he? Is that what Klima? Yeah. 75. Do you think if Johnson and Branson weren't on the team, we would still be a fast, deep team? Yeah. Look at what happened to Carolina. When they finally faced, they escaped Washington. Washington let them off the hook. Washington didn't pound Carolina into oblivion, but the Bruins did. To win in June, you have to have some pushback, some toughness. You can't be as weak as Carolina. And Penguins fans have become so stubborn with this aspect of things that a player like Goaltending gets tarred and feathered because he can hit or he can fight. And by inference in Pittsburgh, if you can do those things, you're a bad hockey player. And that's complete garbage. Now, I get accused of defending Jack Johnson. Let's put him in context. He's a C-plus defenseman. He was very good in his own zone this season. When he finally got to his forehand in the second half, or actually in February, you saw what he could bring to a team. He was one of the reasons that the Penguins only allowed X number of scoring chances and high-danger scoring chances, why they were one of the best in the league. That Jack Johnson was a part of that. What Jack Johnson didn't bring was any ability in the offensive zone. So you can have one guy like that. Two might be pushing it. So the Penguins have to kind of see between Goaltending and Johnson if there's more offensive ability. I think Goaltending showed a little bit. I think Goaltending moved the puck pretty well. And if he can continue that, then I think the Penguins' defense will be okay. At very worst, the Penguins' defense with Chris Letang as he played last year and Brian Dumoulin and a healthy Justin Schultz will be a bit above average. At worst. But don't tell that to the people who think that Jack Johnson submarined Phil Kessel's season. Dan, plug my sponsors. Got to keep you in the black. Actually, Redbeards. Go to Redbeards. Mount Washington, 6th Avenue downtown. Wednesday nights, all-you-can-eat wings. I think it's $12.99. Get yourself a beer, wash it down. I knocked down 30 2 weeks ago. Let's see how many bones you can pile up. Yep, I do got a bolt by 2 p.m. And, man, all the people are watching now. I see everybody came and found us, so I appreciate you on that. Let's recap for everybody who came in, the Evgeni Malkin stuff. Dan Les Colisses, I'll try to pronounce that in French one more time. Dan Les Colisses in Montreal reported last night that the Penguins and Florida Panthers are indeed discussing Evgeni Malkin, and Jonathan Huberdeau is a part of that. There's Huberdeau. Obviously, this is the second report linking the Penguins and the Florida Panthers. My little engine that could. Pittsburgh Hockey Now reported almost the very same thing back on May 7th. There's Huberdeau, who had 92 points last season. No, that's not Dan Kingerski. I only wish I made $5.9 million a year. Huberdeau had 92 points, only 8 hits. So his pushback is a little bit in question, but obviously at 26 years old, at worst case scenario, you swap maybe a gentler guy in the locker room, Huberdeau, who plays a bit like Phil Kessel. That's the worst that happens for the Penguins. That's not too terrible. Not sure what the Redbeards' contact was, but they kicked in. Yes, Redbeards. They're actually not an official sponsor of the videos, but they're a sponsor of Pittsburgh Hockey Now. So, and if you know what, if you pop in there, especially up on Mount Washington, where the owner, Len's a good guy. In fact, Len used to coach junior hockey. And I'm not talking low-level junior hockey. I'm talking real junior hockey. Len is usually up on Mount Washington. And just, hey, I saw you on the hockey site, and Dan said you used to coach junior hockey. He'll talk to you. Len's a great guy and a great sponsor at Redbeards. Well, it's 2 p.m., kids. I gots to go. I appreciate all of you very much. We'll do this again next Wednesday, either at 1 p.m. or at 6 p.m. Check your bat times, your bat channels, and your local bat listings. See ya.